Hello, dear students. My name is Hannah, your foreign language teacher. This is the second episode of our series Talk Like a Novel. Again, we are going to learn several new words from the novel The Sundial. If you want to talk like a novel, let's get started. In our story, Mrs. Holloran and Mrs. Ogilvie were at a party given for the anniversary of the wedding Mrs. Holloran, and she is the mistress of a big house. They were sitting and eating their meals next to each other. But Mrs. Holloran has no appetite and she says, being a queen is a public penance. Here appears our first word, penance. Penance is a kind of self-punishment that somebody can do to make up for your own fault, okay? And it implies such a feeling of guilt or regret, and you do some acts to make up for it. It can be sometimes for religious reasons. For example, let's say I commit a sin and then I perform some acts of charity to make up for it. When Mrs. Holloran says, being a queen is a public penance, she is implying that being a queen, or in her case being a lady of the house, might seem admirable or desirable, but in reality, it's kind of a self-punishment. It doesn't protect you from emotional suffering caused by the burdensome responsibility that is given to you because you're the lady of the house, you're the head of the house. And Mrs. Ogilvie responds her by saying, maybe I should get you something from the kitchen. And the writer describes her hovering solicitously. This means that Mrs. Ogilvie was standing nearby and waiting attentively for the needs of Mrs. Holloran. Because, as I mentioned before, Mrs. Holloran has a high rank in the house and at the party. You can come across with the verb to hover in a restaurant, for example. The waiter is waiting for your order very carefully and attentively. So to hover can be used for the waiter. And solicitously shows that Mrs. Ogilvie was genuinely caring about Mrs. Holloran's needs, Mrs. Holloran's emotional state, for example. After showing this care, Mrs. Ogilvie dabs at her plate. This means that she is touching her food very lightly with her fork, for example, and it's not eating much, but it is just a delicate gesture towards it, and showing that she doesn't like the food at all. As the meaning of dab at something is to touch something very lightly and swiftly, you can use in the context of, for example, when you're cleansing your face, I take a cotton pad and I dab at my face with a cotton pad, very lightly touching my face. Then Mrs. Holloran sends her to the champagne tent to get herself a drink, and the writer says Mrs. Ogilvie had gone scurrying toward the tent. Scurry means to move with a very small steps and very quickly. And it's often used for small creatures like squirrel and mice. Actually, I recently came across a book, a graphic novel called Scary, and the main characters were mice. So I think I'm going to leave I leave here as a visual aid so that you can easily keep that in mind. The word scary, to walk, to move very quickly with the short steps. Okay, she had gone scurrying toward the tent, and revelers were still lingering at the party. A reveler is someone who dances, celebrates, or I don't know, sings in a very loud and noisy way. And just like the partying people in the scene. So while the revelers were still lingering at the party, Mrs. Holloran sat quietly, and she has lost in her thoughts, and She was looking far away to the sundial on the lawn. Now, let's make up our own story using these words, because I believe that creating your own story with the target vocabulary is the most efficient way to internalize them. Now, I will tell you a story which is far away from reality, okay? I was on my way home, and a beggar approached me and asked me for money, claiming that she had a kid who needs to be nourished. And I was too lazy to take out of my wallet, and I simply ignored her and walked away. When I arrived home, I realized that I had lost my wallet, and it nearly took me a week to find it again. And that experience taught me a lesson. I felt so guilty, and I begged for forgiveness. And as a penance, I promised to spend a whole week volunteering in an orphanage. During the time there, I cooked meals for the orphans. Sometimes, when I served the food with affection and eagerness, I couldn't get the reaction that I hoped for. They didn't say anything in gratitude, they just dabbed at their plates and barely touching the food. Feeling a bit discouraged, of course, but still wanting to help, I asked, hovering solicitously, would you like me to bring you something else from the kitchen? Then I scurried to the kitchen, searching for something appealing to the children, anything that might bring a smile to their faces. It wasn't always easy, of course, but the satisfaction that comes from helping people in need is priceless and absolutely more meaningful than any thanks and praises.